And I will say, for me personally, I want the Forward Party, both nationally and at a state level, to take stances on things that people care about, to paint a clear picture as to what the country could look like if the Forward Party actually got its way and there were forward endorsed officials at every level.
Hey y'all, welcome to the Texas Forward podcast. Our guest today needs no introduction, the co-chair and the face of the Forward Party, Andrew Yang. Andrew was a candidate in the 2020 Democratic Presidential Primaries and the 2021 New York City Democratic Mayoral Primary. Yang left the Democratic Party stating that he was more comfortable trying to fix the system than being a part of it, and founded the Forward Party in October 2021. Prior to his career in politics, Yang enjoyed considerable success in the private sector before founding his nonprofit, Venture for America, in 2011. Brian and Andrew discuss how Yang has developed a habit of taking on big challenges and what keeps him going when things get tough. The state of the 2024 presidential election, including independent candidate RFK Jr. and Democratic challenger Dean Phillips. Reasons for optimism in Texas, the Forward Party, and America at large. If you want more from the Texas Forward podcast, follow us on X, formerly Twitter, at forward_Texas, or on Instagram at Texas_forward. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Welcome to a very special episode of the Texas Forward podcast. I'm Brian Lee here with the Forward Party godfather himself, Andrew Yang.
Thank you. It's great to be here in Texas. Woohoo!
Yes, we're
everything's bigger here.
It is, including the North American Blockchain Summit. Big shout out and big thank you to Lee Bratcher for putting this on. I mean, what an impressive event.
Yeah, if you're seeing video, I don't know if you guys get video, but that we have this massive backdrop. There are 5 cameras on us. You can switch camera angles every 10 seconds.
Yeah, we're taking it up a notch. Pretty good. Not probably walk in the park for you, but for me, taking it up a notch. But Andrew, so you're the co-chair of the Forward Party. You do events like this all the time. You're traveling. You're doing all the shows, you're promoting, you're spreading the brand, you're spreading the awareness about what we're doing with the Forward Party. What does that role, besides all of that important work, being the face of what we're doing and spreading that awareness, what does that actually involve on a day-to-day level? Are you involved in like decision making on the operations front, or what does that actually look like?
It looks different every day. On the average day, I might wake up. The single biggest thing is, am I at home or on the road?
Yeah.
I'm on the road probably several days a week. But let's say I'm at home. And the average day, I've got a slew of Zoom meetings, maybe an in-person meeting. I do have calls with Matt Shinners and other people who work at Forward about goings on. There'll be specific things. For example, I'll get like a pile of requests, and they'll say like, "Hey, can you do this? Will you be here? Will you be there?" And then media. So you put it together. In my days, I'm never wanting for things to do. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, I can imagine that's probably true. So, I mean, is there, when we talk about like the messaging of the Forward Party and our principles, are there conversations that you're involved in where you're maybe, I know we have obviously a full team. We have a CEO, Lindsay, who's, making those decisions. But do you ever push back on some of those strategic things or get involved in those discussions?
Yeah. I mean, we have animated conversations and differences of viewpoint, just like you'd imagine. The message I want to send to the folks here in Texas is that you can make the Texas Forward Party what you want it to be in terms of what it stands for. And our job nationally is to support you in your vision. As long as what you're doing is within like the overall umbrella, which is, as we all know, at this point, principles based. So you'd have to be kind of a jerk to run a bell. But we want you to find the issues that will activate and galvanize folks here in Texas and then own them and say, look, this is what we're going to be about here. We don't imagine that we know better than you all do. But yeah, we have these conversations. And I will say for me personally, I want the Forward Party, both nationally and at a state level, to take stances on things that people care about, to paint a clear picture as to what the country could look like if the Forward Party actually got its way and there were forward endorsed officials at every level.
Yeah, very nice. So I definitely want to dive into Texas specific questions here shortly, but I want to take a step back and talk about you, Andrew Yang, as an individual. So you mentioned principles. You've really developed quite a track record for kind of taking some big swings, going after some moonshot, long shot, things like the presidential campaign and even the Forward Party. You ask most people what chances the third party have to succeed, and, the odds seemingly would be pretty low. So when did that start for you, first of all? And as a secondary question, are there ever moments where you have a little self-doubt, where you're looking in the mirror and you're just like, what am I doing? Getting discouraged, and how do you work through those moments?
It's a great question. So growing up as a son of immigrants, my parents told me, look, if someone else can do something, you should be able to do it too. They wanted me to believe in myself in that way. But you don't really believe in yourself until things start to happen at various ages and stages. So I tried to start a company in my 20s and it didn't work out, and that really stung. But then I worked for another entrepreneur, and then I became the CEO of a company in my early 30s that then grew to become pretty significant and was then acquired by a public company. So at that point, you start thinking, okay, I can kind of make things happen.
Yeah.
And then I started an organization called Venture for America, and I put in a bit of money, and then it grew. So I'd been a part of multiple growth stories, and that makes me know that awesome things are possible that maybe some people don't see initially, because I've done it again and again. And it's not to say that everything will work every time, but looking at the career I've had based upon where I started, or even what I believed was possible when I was in my teens or 20s, gosh, I mean, can you imagine? Especially now, I mean, like since I've had such an incredible last several years. And I know that we're capable of building something awesome in the Forward Party and creating a brighter future for folks, because everyone wants it, everyone needs it.
Yeah.
2/3 of Americans know the current thing's not working. So what kind of country are we if we're just going to slump with these two increasingly dysfunctional parties?
Right.
We know we can build something new and better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for someone like yourself, hats off to you, first of all, just for doing what so many people know we need to do, right? And it's fix this broken system that we have. For someone like yourself, I mean, there's got to be considerable opportunity costs in the sense that you could be doing so many other things, Andrew.
Oh, well, thanks for noticing. Now, I mean, I can tell you guys, like, I ran for president. A lot of people believed in me. And now I feel like I have a vision for how we can improve things. And, I'm going to do everything I can to make it happen. But I'll say that the world continuously is showing me that we're on the right track.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about the opportunity cost for me, I've got a great life. I work hard, but every day someone sees me on the street and is just like, hey, Andrew Yang, I'm with you. Now, is that person necessarily, a registered Forward Party, supporter? Like, generally, probably not.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. Exactly. But I get positive reinforcement all the time, and my life is great. My family, like, we can take a nice holiday trip or whatnot. Everything's good on our end. As you can tell, I'm not necessarily wired to try and make sure I die with the maximal amount of money in the bank. I think that's kind of a dumb way to live.
Can't take it with you.
You know what I mean? And if I did have that money, I think people might know this about me. I'd probably end up doing something wholesome with it anyway. So like it would probably find its way someplace else. I'm like a fairly simple guy. I think someone asked me, it might have been you. Someone asked me, it's like, hey, when you fly out of here, is it going to be commercial or not? And I was like, of course it's commercial. I've got my United frequent flyer and I'm just going to get on there. I will say when I sit down on the plane, some people are like, hey, you're Andrew. I'm like, yes, I am. So that happens to me all the time. But, I mean, my life is great and I love what we do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the proof is in the pudding, right? I mean, your venture before this was a nonprofit, Venture for America. You did that for what,
6.5 years? Yeah.
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 Very nice.
My parents regret I'm such a wholesome fellow. No, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I do want to talk about something that speaks to the sense of the possible.
Sure.
Because right now people are sad that it looks like we're going to see a Biden-Trump rematch.
Yeah.
And I'm here to say that there's someone who I think can upgrade on that matchup, and it's a guy named Dean Phillips who's running as a Democrat against Joe. I think that Dean's going to do really well in New Hampshire, in part because, frankly, Joe does not do well in New Hampshire, and that was before he demoted New Hampshire in favor of South Carolina. So I want everyone listening to this to imagine the headlines if Congressman from Minnesota, Dean Phillips, beats Joe Biden in New Hampshire on January 23rd. Does that give rise to a giant whirlwind of stories saying, oh my gosh, like Joe Biden just lost the first Democratic primary? I think it does.
Yeah.
And I think that Dean Phillips is going to make it happen. And why does this matter for Forward? Is that Dean Phillips is for trying to weaken the two-party system in various ways. He's for a nonpartisan, bipartisan cabinet, as one example. He's for campaign finance reform. He's for opening up the primary system. And he believed all this before he ran into the DNC shivving him every day. So if Dean Phillips does end up upsetting Joe Biden, you could have a transformation of American politics, not in some distant future, but in 2025. Like this is like a 13, 14-month possibility that I, for one, am very, very excited about. And I'd urge everyone to check out Dean Phillips because his campaign is on the ground right now. And I think they're set to make really, really big waves over on the Democratic side.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm definitely going to have to do a little bit more research on Dean Phillips.
And I say this as someone who, look, people probably know, like, I would love it if we had a better option than Trump on the Republican side.
Sure.
I'd be pumped if Nikki Haley ended up emerging from that process or something like that. I just don't think that's likely. I think Trump is far and away the favorite to win that race. Most people think that Joe Biden is far and away the favorite to win the Democratic side, but the truth is 71% of Dems are uncomfortable with Joe as the nominee, in part because the dude's going to be 82 in 2024.
Yeah, he's getting up there.
I mean, it's starting. This is a true story, too. I was backstage and I was just talking about, our presidential contenders. And this guy sitting there said, you end up having this very, very sharp cognitive decline between the ages of 80 and 85 is what he said. He's like he had a parent and they went from being with it to not with it in really short order. And I was like, oh my God. Him saying that. I mean, it's painful that kind of thing is relevant or even central to our politics.
But it's true.
But when he said it, I was like, he's talking the truth.
Right. It's like when you think about talking to any 80-year-old that you're God bless them if it's a grandparent or something like that. But, you can tell they've lost a step or two typically.
Yeah. And to be clear, I think Trump's lost some steps too. But he's getting a pass because he's against Biden. Yeah. Imagine if Trump was against a 54-year-old hale and hearty CEO, leader, member of Congress, and Dean Phillips, and all of a sudden Trump would seem ancient by comparison. The only reason Trump's getting a pass on his age and his acuity is because Biden is older.
Yeah. Well, we need more options, right?
Yeah, let's go. And isn't Forward about more options? So, I'm super excited about the possibilities in 24 in ways that other people I don't think see coming. But Dean Phillips, I think, is going to win New Hampshire, and after that, all bets are off.
Very interesting. You heard it here first.
That's right. Making some news.
I want to ask you, too, about the man who's getting ready to speak behind us, RFK Jr. So some recent polling, he's basically running, even with Trump and Biden. It's looking like it potentially could be a, three-way split. So what do you make of that? And, for somebody who, you wrote a book, I want to throw this in here too, the last election, talking about the kind of existential threats of, authoritarianism. Seems like there may be some kind of references to a potential second term with the Trump administration. And even people on the right, my family and I come from the right. And many people on the right, view Biden. I mean, they look at the fact that we have all these, new wars, World War III right around the corner. There's plenty of people who view him, a second term, as that existential threat as well. So how do you balance that if you're somebody who wants to see a third party, get that real notoriety, really show that it's possible, and maybe support an RFK Jr., but also they don't want to be that spoiler and put that other person, in the office?
Yeah, I'd love it if we could upgrade our system so we could all vote for who we want and not be worried about spoiling anything or wasting your vote or any of that nonsense. I completely understand the folks who are drawn to RFK because he's a very, very compelling messenger, and his message is around, trying to get beyond the two-party system, which is something I obviously believe in and agree with. And it's a sign of how strong that energy is getting and that movement's getting. That you're right, he's polling very, very high, maybe higher than anyone, including Ross Perot. Aren't we in Ross Perot's hometown right now? That's a true story, right? So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
he's from Fort Worth.
Yeah. So Ross Perot got 19%, and it's possible that RFK can do even better.
Interesting. So I guess the real question then is, what would you say to somebody who's a forward party supporter who is interested in RFK but worried about that potential of that other person getting in there?
So I would say the first thing we need to do is try and have the best options possible at every part of the ticket. So that to me is Dean Phillips over Biden. It's Nikki Haley over Trump, though again I don't see that as likely. And then let's see where we are, and then look around and be like, okay, who are the choices?
Sure.
And then take the best choice. So I'm a very pragmatic person, and the major party nominations haven't been clinched yet.
Sure.
So I want to try and get after those while they're still being determined. And then after that's been settled by next summer, then it's going to be an interesting one, because to your point, it's going to be the two major candidates, but it's also going to be RFK and then a couple of other people potentially as well.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. That's for sure.
Yeah. And the wildness is a sign again of just how vital what we're doing at Forward is, because people know it's not working and they want choices. I mean, you can see it in ways big and small.
Yeah, 100%. I want to touch on Texas here a little bit. So with Forward Party, we've taken this kind of really great approach in the sense that, and this is just the American approach, right? It's let the states kind of do their own thing and see what the best ideas are. Let the best ideas rise to the top. You can see kind of what's working for some states, what isn't for others. So what have you seen with other states within the Forward Party do well so far? What's working in other states besides Texas that we can potentially replicate?
Yeah, so one thing that we should celebrate is that there were 5 Forward aligned or affiliated candidates who won in their elections earlier in November. And so that's certainly something we can be encouraged by and also try and emulate or replicate. I was just in Florida, and there's a guy, Brian Butte, who's running for supervisor of the Seminole County Board of Elections. And he's running as just an out-and-out Forward Party member. Now, he's a little bit ahead of the curve in that, it's hard to run just expressly as a Forward Party candidate in a lot of parts of the country.
Yeah.
But he managed to do it. And so then, and we had 5 folks win. So if there are folks in Texas that want to tackle a school board race, a city council race, and it might be that you can't put Forward next to your name because of the rules but then you can still be endorsed by the Forward Party, and we can make headway in that direction. Another issue I think has gotten resonance in some parts of the country that Texas can decide whether you like it or not is term limits. And one thing I enjoy about term limits is that it sends like a really powerful for the people anti-insider message that a lot of folks respond to.
Yeah.
Because a lot of folks are pissed off at the insiders, and then you say, hey, we're for term limits. Oh, I like you. Because I can tell you're not just trying to sit there and make a career out of this. Like, you actually want to reform things.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice. So one more Texas-specific question here. So, Andrew, you've touched a lot of different industries. You've done a lot of different things. You've had long ventures and interests in the public and the private sector. Technology is a big area of expertise for you. So, just generally speaking, what do you think Texas does well economically or from an innovation standpoint, and where are the areas that Texas is lagging?
Well, Texas is growing like mad because you're awesome. Your taxes are low. Your weather is good. And you still have an edge in affordability over certainly where I live in New York City. I mean, geez. And California, I'd suggest. And folks who come here, I have CEO friends who've come here and they say, wow, do mayors and public officials roll out the red carpet for business? Like, you get here and they're like, what can we do? What do you need? What can we do to help? So that's pretty freaking good. I mean, it's a pretty good list of assets. Like, I think Texas's growth is going to continue. Now, the things that could be done better from what I hear, it's around infrastructure and energy infrastructure. I mean, Texas is kind of an energy capital, and yet, some of the parts of the energy infrastructure are lagging behind. And some of the growth has brought with it bottlenecks in terms of, let's call it airports, highways, homes, and it's starting to impact affordability in some places. You got tremendous assets, a lot to work with. I will say, too, that one turnoff for some people, for the business community here in Texas, is strangely enough the politics, where folks want a welcoming environment where things work well. What they don't want is ideology and cudgeling and things that make them feel less secure and safe in an environment. So I think Texas's business environment would actually benefit if it had a more reasonable approach, which is something that I think the Forward Party might be able to help with.
Definitely. It seems like with that kind of mindset that Texas, and that is why Texas seems to be a focal point for the Forward Party at large.
There's a lot of energy here because most Texans do not love what the heck is happening, out of Austin. I mean, Democrats feel like they're on the outside looking in. Moderate Republicans feel like they're on the outside looking in. Independents feel like they're on the outside looking in. And there's just a ton of energy. A lot of awesome people here, a lot of resources. So it's always great to be here because the potential for Forward is so high.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you kind of a little bit of a off the wall question here. Curious to get your take. I heard recently that Elon Musk's Neuralink was recently finally approved for the FDA approved their human trials. And what they're trying to do is basically get, for people who don't know what Neuralink is, get a human brain to be able to communicate with a computer. And their first thing they're trying to do would be get people to control the computer cursor or something like that with their thoughts. So, question for you on that, Andrew. Would you ever plug into something like a Neuralink? And what do you think about that type of technology?
Well, the first thing I thought of when you brought it up is something like a quadriplegic who's using it to be able to communicate or work. And if I were in that position, I'd obviously be thrilled to have those kinds of tools and technology. I'm not someone who is it's like I'm not someone who chases down cybernetic capabilities or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm curious about them. But I think that these things could improve the human condition for people who could benefit. And then eventually they might reach a level where all of us benefit.
Sure. So you were the UBI guy. That was your claim to fame in the presidential campaign. And it seems like you've kind of taken a step back from, UBI specifically in your message.
There's a period where I thought, I'm going to be the RCV guy.
Yeah?
I'm going to be the ranked choice voting guy. Continue, though.
Well, you still kind of are, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Forward Party.
That has happened, yeah.
Yeah. Well, my question for you there was, what's the next UBI for you? Is there anything that you're looking at on the horizon and saying, like, that's something that, you, Andrew Yang, could really get excited about and, position like you did with the UBI?
If there's a real life policy I'm super excited about and passionate about, it's the enhanced child tax credit, which was something of a UBI for a lot of working families in America. We lifted 3 million American kids out of poverty in 2021. We halved the poverty rate in America for kids, and then we let it go back to 12% the following year. That stuff is unconscionable. I still can't believe I can say those words, and it's a true fact about what happened in America. So I want to redo/undo that as quickly as possible, and then I'd be able to sleep better than just knowing it's like, okay, because we know we can do it. We literally did it. It's like you don't need millions of extra poor kids. I mean, I even think 5%. You'd be like, why the hell do we have 5% poor kids, much less 12%? So you can tell I get very, very jacked up about that. I'd love to change that. I think there's a chance we can change that as early as 2025. So that's what I'm going to swing at. It might not have the same ring as UBI, like Mr. Enhanced Child Tax Credit guy, but I'm, people consider me a visionary, and I appreciate it in some level.
Yeah.
But I'm very, very pragmatic and just willing to take an improvement. You could look at Enhanced Child Tax Credit and say, hey, it's not UBI. It'd be like, well, it got all those kids out of poverty. Like,
sure.
Let's do that. And by the way, I think that becomes a step towards something like a UBI. I think poverty should not be nearly as rampant in the richest country in the history of the world as it is. We can do much, much better. So that's what I'm passionate about. And I'm passionate about it in part because I saw it. We did it. We did it a couple different ways. I mean, I came off the trail in 2020, and then this thing kicked in 2021. And I was so proud because I felt like I had something to do with it.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine seeing like the high point of your career undone. I mean, it's
frustrating.
Yeah, it's very, very frustrating. So I'm still after it.
Love it, Andrew. Well, super excited, like I said, to see where this goes, and so grateful for you, and so many people in this movement are so grateful for you for doing what you're doing and just being that leader of this movement and everything you do every day.
Well, thank you to everyone who's working with us on Forward. Look, I'm an impatient guy. I want to get stuff done, but at the same time, we know that we're in this for the long haul, and that the rate of progress could be nonlinear. Like, it's not going to go up like in a gentle slope. That's not happening. I'm going to suggest again, like, hey, if Dean Phillips winds up our president in 2025, I could wind up in the cabinet, and then there could be something very, very different going on with Forward Party, where it's like, hey, it's not even a bipartisan, nonpartisan cabinet; it's a tripartisan. And then like the cabinet secretary who's a member of the Forward Party comes around and goes like, hey guys, we're going to do these things. So or it could be someone running for office here in Texas who ends up galvanizing the state in a particular way. Like these movements have different ebbs and flows and rhythms.
For sure.
And so we need to do our work. We need to execute. We need to grow. We need to be positive and confident and resilient. But also we have to know it's like, look, there are going to be periods when it's fast and periods when it's not so fast. And then accept the not so fast periods and be like, okay, what can I get done? Because the country is in a rut that has been building for, what do you think? 200 years? Something like that?
Quite a while.
Like, if you were to tell me, like, in our second year, we have dozens of elected officials, tens of thousands of incredible people around the country, some of the opportunities we have, it's like, it's like very exciting. Are there things that I obviously look at and be like, oh, I wish we were doing better or humming on? Totally. 100%. But we have to know that this thing is going to be a multi-year, probably even multi-cycle endeavor, and I'm here for it. One of the jokes that I tell is like, someone asked me, it's like, hey, are you going to run again? And I say, apparently I've got another 40 years. No, but again, I'm an impatient guy. Like, we're going to get this thing done in much less time than that.
Let's do it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Andrew, real quick before I let you go, I know you are here to raise some money. I wanted to give you a little something.
Look at this, guys. It's
a
$1 million
bucks.
bill. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
My dad used to give this to waitresses, or he was in carpet sales for 40 years, and he sent me this for my birthday. I saw it when I was walking out. I'm like, I'm gonna give that to Andrew.
That's a pretty good gimmick. I should have gone with $1 million a month.
See, there you go. Thanks, everybody. Thank you again to Andrew Yang, and thank you to all of our listeners. This is Brian Lee, Texas Forward Podcast, and we'll see you next time.